Okay, so I'll be making some clarification around research objectives, research questions, research hypothesis, because there is a link between the three of them, and the choice of method of analysis, because the method of your research objective is a critical um, has a critical role to play in the choice of method that you use, and there is a serious link between research objective hypothesis and that of research questions. I will be making this clarification in this video, and I will be making a number of clarification with a number of issues or research issues that I've come across in my doing a lot of external examination, oral examination for students across different universities or even within and outside the country. I saw a number of issues, errors, mistakes because people don't have proper clarification, understanding about this issue. So I'll be making a lot of this clarification. So my videos are more of clarification issues and guide the thought process for research, right? And I'll be posting most of these videos on a Facebook page that I've created called Edunomics NG. So you can go follow on this page because it's so important so that we can learn and clarify issues and also engage ourselves in the discussion. And also you can also visit the YouTube page that I've created or called Edunomics. Different between the two of them that the first Edunomics for the Facebook page has no U, but the YouTube page has a U, Edunomics. The other one is Edunomics, and they all end with NG. So please go follow and subscribe, and then let's start the engagement, the comments, share and like to several people that you want that should learn from this process. Okay, so let's start this morning on this video. So I want to start by saying that the choice of method of analysis for your research depends so much on your research objectives, right? Your research objective has a critical role to play in terms of what method of analysis that you should take. So when I look at your research objective, when I see your research objective, I will know definitely whether the choice of your method of analysis is in line with the research objective. And I will be giving a lot of examples or few examples to clarify this issue as I discuss this issue further. Now, in quantitative research, which we all know, we know that there are basically method of analysis are classified under two in quantitative research. Basically, there are two of them or two methods of analysis that you can find under quantitative research. Number one is descriptive analysis that we all know. Number two is differential statistics that we know. Method of analysis are classified in quantitative research under these two approaches, under these two. So the method you are using is either falling under descriptive analysis or is falling under differential analysis, and no one is higher than the other. It's just a function of the specific research objective that you have set out to achieve that determine which one you use out of the two, right? For example, if the objective is to investigate, analyze or evaluate or examine just one concept in your topic, right? Because your topic has different concepts. It can be one, it can be two, it can be three, right? As far as your concern or your specific objective is to just investigate, analyze, evaluate or examine a concept in your title on your topic, all you need is descriptive analysis to achieve that objective. You don't need anything more than descriptive analysis to achieve that objective in a quantitative research, right? And I can give several examples. For instance, somebody says that is looking at the influence of HIV/AIDS on household income or consumption, right? There are two concepts there: household income, household consumption, and then there is also another concept called HIV/AIDS, right? So what the person will do is if the person concerned is to evaluate or investigate HIV/AIDS status across Lagos State, which is one of the objectives, then all you need to do is that you go to different hospitals, get the data, and you can classify HIV/AIDS status by local government, by sex, by cities, or by different dimensions, right? That can be done with just descriptive statistics because you are just describing or you are just making investigation on just one concept. So you can do that with graphs, with table, with percentage analysis, how many female, how many male in terms of percentage, what local by local government, what is the percentage of people that have HIV/AIDS by local government. All of these are descriptive issues. The average HIV/AIDS status across state, across local government, or across cities. These are all descriptive issues. So when you are analyzing or investigating just one concept in your topic, take note, you are going to be in the arena of descriptive statistics or descriptive approaches to achieve that objective. However, if the research objectives links two or three concepts together, Take note, when you are linking 2 or 3 concepts together, where your interest is in relationship, influence, association, or the effect or impact of one or on the other, or the relation between the 2 or 3 of them, then you are in the arena of inferential statistics. So take note, so when you are setting up within your research title and writing your objective, the kind of objective you write is critical to determining the method that you use. So when I see objective, I will know whether this objective is going to be so method or not, so that alignment has to take place. So my point is that when you are trying to link 2 or 3 concepts together, for instance, the example I gave, HIV/AIDS status on household consumption or household income or expenditure, right? So if you are looking at the influence of HIV/AIDS status on household consumption, right, you are linking 2 concepts together. But if you are just looking at the household consumption alone or the HIV/AIDS status across the state alone, each of them individually, that is discrete issue. But when you are linking the 2 of them to look at their relationship or influence or effect, you are bringing 2 concepts together or 3 concepts together, and you are linking. In linking them, you need an inferential statistic because you are inferring one from the other. So that is an inferential issue, right? Now let me now talk about the link between your research hypothesis, research objective, and at the same time your research questions. I'll start by saying that note, you won't need the research hypothesis for a research objective that you employ descriptive analysis to achieve. Anytime you are achieving an objective with descriptive analysis, you don't need the research hypothesis for that objective, because it's been said severally that your number of research objective must be equal to your number of research questions, but they must not be equal to your research hypothesis. Not in all cases that your number of objectives will be equal to your research hypothesis. They can be equal and must be equal to your research questions, but they might not be equal with your research hypothesis, because in some of your research objective you are using descriptive analysis. In some of your research objective you are using inferential analysis. You only write research hypothesis for those objectives that you are using this inferential statistics for. If you are not using inferential statistics to achieve an objective, you don't need to write a research hypothesis for it. I give an example. I went to university to do an external examination, and in that university, very fine work. However, in the presentation and when I look at the work, I think it was a master's thesis or PhD thesis, I can't remember, in that university. The guy has 5 good objectives, right? And each of the objectives is trying to evaluate in each of the objectives one concept in this topic, just one, like the case of just evaluating HIV/AIDS status across the state, or looking at household consumption, looking at household income across the state, or looking at household consumption across the state. Each of them are very good, objective. If you can go out and do a collect proper data to give us the dimensions of each of them, and 5 objectives, but each of them is just one concept that he wants to evaluate or investigate, right? And by doing that, you only need descriptive analysis because it's one concept. However, I saw research hypothesis in the thesis or dissertation where he has about 5 research hypotheses, and I raised the alarm to say, no, you are investigating just one concept. Therefore, and because you are not linking 2 concepts together, you don't need an hypothesis at all. So this thesis or dissertation does not need an hypothesis. This research project does not need an hypothesis, right? So I told him upfront to say, you don't need an hypothesis. I told even the supervisors that there is no need for hypothesis for this project, right? So what I mean is that when you have an objective that will be achieved by descriptive statistics, you don't need an hypothesis for that. You know that hypothesis for the one that you are going to achieve with inferential statistics. The reason is that hypotheses look at significant influence or significant impact or significant relationship between 2 concepts. Because when you say there is a relationship, or when you say there is an association, when you say there is an effect or influence or impact between 2 or 3 things, you want to know whether that influence, association, or relationship is significant, because it might not be a significant relationship, it might not be a significant impact, it might not be. For instance, somebody says the reason why a lady is crying is because the husband is always mean to her. It might not, there might be other reason, even though you say it might be a minor reason, right? So you do significant tests, and that is what hypothesis is doing. And hypothesis is only done when you are linking 2 or 3 concepts together and you are using differential statistics to achieve that objective. Clear, right? So you only need a research hypothesis for a research objective that you employ differential statistics to achieve. That's the point I'm making. This means that the number of objectives can be more than research hypothesis. For instance, you have 3 or 4 objectives. One of them is to investigate just one concept, and then 2 of them is to investigate the link between two or three things, the other two. It means that the first research question or research objective does not need an hypothesis, but the other two will need hypothesis. It means that you have three objectives but two hypotheses. But take note, when you have three objectives, you must have three research questions, but you can have less hypothesis than number of research questions or number of objectives, because number of research questions that you are going to answer are going to be the things that you are going to achieve in your study. By the way, every objective must be achieved, must be analyzed in your data presentation section, must be properly analyzed and answered. That is why the number of research questions must be called the number of objectives. But your hypothesis might not be. If you are going to use inferential statistics for all your objectives, that is the only case where your number of hypotheses will be equal to your number of objectives. Take note. So we all know that discrete statistics include the following: percentage analysis, mean, median, mode, average. You want to look at the average score, average inflation in Nigeria, or average number of people that fall into poverty, right? Whether they are 50 or 30. Those are inferential issues. Graphs, table, standard deviation, variances. These are all things that fall under descriptive analysis, right? But inferential statistics include the following: regression, chi-square, t-test, ANOVA, or correlation. Any one of these fall under inferential statistics. So if you are linking two or three concepts together, you are either using any of the inferential approach. But if you are just describing an event, you are using any of the descriptive analysis to be able to unveil, unravel, or investigate and show the dynamics and dimensions of what you are investigating on that concept. Let me give an example. For instance, somebody is looking at the effect of HRO management practices on millennial work attitude. There are two concepts here: the HRO management practices and work attitude. Now, the first thing you need to think about is how do you measure HRO management practices and how do you measure work attitude, right? These are two concepts, right? So the two concepts, you have an independent variable called HRO management practices, and HRO management practices by literature is many. There are so many of them, but let me just list four of them for us. Training and development is one way to measure HRO management practice. The training and development programs of that organization is very critical. It's one of them. The other one is supervisory support, job security, work-life balance. These are four ways that I've listed, even though the literature will show you several ways of HRO management practices, right? But the dependent variable work attitude is also a concept, and it can be commitment of the staff that you are interested in, because you're talking about millennials, okay? And you can be interested in that job satisfaction. So the interest is to look at how each of these HRO management practices that I've listed have been influenced commitment or job satisfaction, right? So let me give an example. And in every research project, whether undergraduate, master's, or PhD, you are going to have main objective, or which we also call the aim, main objective. And the main objective of this study is to examine the effect of HRO management practice on millennial work attitude in the banking sector or in the manufacturing sector or whatever case that you are interested in. It can even be an SME sector, right? Which is the main objective. Now, the specific objectives are, I'm now going to use each of the measures of HRO practices that I've identified in the literature. There are many, but I pick only four. Picking those four can also be informed by maybe the gap in the literature. It can be informed by several other things, maybe their importance for that industry or whatever reason why you pick the four of them, right? So number one objective is to evaluate the training and development programs in the banking sector. Training and development programs in the banking sector. If your area of study or case study is banking sector, you are just evaluating training and development program, just one concept, which is one of the measures of HRO management practices, just one concept, because you are just going to unravel, evaluate the dimensions of training and development programs in the banks, the types of training that they do, right? The types of training that they do by department, by unit. Are they focusing on leadership or on financial area or on several areas, right? They can focus on emotional intelligence, focus on several dimensions of training and development programs that they do, right? So all of these training and development, you want to know them by type, you want to know them by how much they spend, you want to know them by how many people have participated, by department, by male, by female. That's a descriptive issue. You need descriptive approach to achieve that, and descriptive approach will tell you percentage by the time you finish collecting data. You can show a lot of things with graphs, tables to unravel these dimensions on unravel this by bank or to the banking industry as a whole to be able to inform policy in this area, right? So it's a descriptive issue. You need descriptive approach to achieve that. But let's say your another objective you have is to examine the effect of training and development on commitment. You are now linking how training and development influences commitment, or what is the effect of training and development on commitment. That's what you are doing. So to examine the effect of training and development programs on commitment of these millennials in the banking sector, you want to look at the link between these two, influence of training and development on commitment. That's an inferential issue. That's what I'm talking about. That falls within inferential analysis. So the approach you use to achieve this objective is inferential. It can never be descriptive. It's inferential. And then the third one is to analyze the influence of supervisory support on commitment, right? It's also an inferential issue because you want to know whether the supervisory support that is being provided by the different banks or department influences commitment of the millennial. That's an inferential issue. You are linking two concepts together. This is what I'm talking about. It means that the first objective will not need research hypothesis. It's only the last two objectives that will need research hypothesis, right? That's what I mean. However, you need research questions for the three of them because you are going to find out something. So you must have a question for each of the things that you want to find out. Number one is that what are the dimensions of the training and development programs in the banking sector? That is a research question because it's a question and it must be in questionnaire form. And when you answer it, you have achieved the objective. That is the reason why the number of research questions must be equal to number of objectives. And you must be able to find because an investigation is a research, you must find out and achieve those objectives. Most time we have seen cases where students set out objectives, set out research questions, and then in the analysis section we are looking for what really has been used to answer the questions and then achieve those objectives. Each of the objectives is properly analyzed, collected data, and then we show investigated. It can be whatever form you want to use to do your investigation, right? Then how does training and development programs impact commitment? This is second objective, the second research question, and it's aligned with the objective, right? That's why there must be alignment between your specific objective and your research questions as well. And then the third one is commitment influenced by supervisory support. They are written in question form, and when you answer them, you have achieved those objectives. That's why every objective is standing on its own as a research question. By the way, it is extremely wrong for us to have double-barrel kind of question or double-barrel kind of objective, looking at the impact of this on this and the impact of that. No, every objective is specific and must stand on its own, standing with a specific question. Your questions and objective must not be ambiguous. They must be kernel. They must be specific. Now, the research hypothesis for these are just two. Why are they two? Because we have only two objectives that will be achieved with inferential statistics. The number one is not going to be achieved with inferential statistics. It's going to be achieved with discrete statistics. Therefore, there will be no need for you to have a research hypothesis for it. What are the research hypotheses? I use hypothesis in E, not I, because they are more than one, right? Number one is that training and development has no significant effect on commitment, and the supervisory support has no significant effect on commitment. You can use effect, you can use influence, right? You can use impact. It does not matter, right? You can use impact. And the only thing to point out here is that research hypotheses look at significant. That's why you must write has no significant influence or significant impact. Now, because it is looking at significant between whether this relationship is significant, whether this impact is significant. Okay, that's why we put significant there. By the way, I wrote all the research hypotheses in null form. You are still correct. It's not compulsory that you write all your research hypotheses. I mean, your research hypothesis is both null and alternative. It's just because we are looking for more volume or more words in the thesis, or else you can write all your research hypotheses in null form and proceed because you are testing the null against the alternative. So there is no need for you to write them. But if your supervisor says that, or if you feel that you want to write it that way, you are still free, right? Take note. Let me give another example. Somebody is looking at corporate governance and asset quality and bank risk-taking behavior in Nigeria. This is the topic. It means that the main objective or the aim of this study, take note, is to examine or investigate the influence of corporate governance and asset quality on bank risk-taking behavior in Nigeria. There are three concepts here, unlike the previous case study that I gave, or example, right? You have a dependent variable called bank risk, right? And then you have independent variables called corporate governance. And corporate governance is a concept, but it is measured by board size, board composition, and several other ways that you can find in the literature to guide you. But I pick only two of them, right? But instead of having the second variable, the third variable asset quality as an independent variable, I'm picking it as an intermediating variable, because probably I'm interested in looking at it as an intermediating variable, not as a standalone variable, independent variable, which is also allowed. I also do this because so that you understand when you have intermediate variable, how do you write your objective and your hypothesis and your research questions, right? So let's go on. What are the research questions for this study? Number one is that what is the level of risk among the selected banks? You want to know the level of risk. It means that there's a threshold for knowing risk, which can be capital adequacy ratio. So you collect the data and then you begin to look at it. Anybody that goes above that is risky or is less risk. Well, there are other ways. That's what we call the Z score or whatever it is. So you collect different data from the banks and then you compute the Z score. And from the Z score, you say this bank has a risk element, this bank has a low risk element or medium risk element. This is a descriptive issue. You don't need inferential statistics for it because you are not looking at the influence of something on risk. You are just looking at the level of risk. So you are interested in risk and you look at the literature and how they compute risk, and then you collect the data from these banks, compute risk for each of the bank using a Z-score, whatever approach that you want to use. Or there's what we call the standard deviation or what we call the variance approach, right? Which you can use. There's also what we call the coupler approach. These are all several ways you can measure risk, right? So you just compute risk for these banks. That's a descriptive issue, and then you plot it on graph to show, or you put in a table and describe or discuss. That is just a descriptive issue. So the first research question is a descriptive issue, right? So you use discrete statistics for it. Now the second objective is what is the effect of board composition of bank risk? This is an inferential issue. Look at that question. It's looking at how board composition, which is a measure of as corporate governance, what effect does it have on banks taking risk? Now, the other one is that what is the role of asset quality on the corporate governance bank risk relationship? Because corporate governance can influence bank risk. So the interest is that what role is asset quality playing on this link? Is the asset quality influenced by this relationship, and that can lead to bank risk? Is that the interest? That is kind of intermediating kind of concept that is being talked about here. So let's say, for instance, your research objectives will now be to determine the level of risk. It's a descriptive issue. To analyze the influence of board composition of bank risk. It's an inferential issue. To investigate the role of asset quality on the corporate governance bank risk relationship. It's also an inferential issue because I'm linking three concepts together. By the way, corporate governance can be bank composition, it can be board size, any one that I want to adjust. I'm just using one example, right? Just to guide us. Because each of the concepts, you now have ways to measure them. That's why I'm going to come to us to teach us about how do you move from concept to indicator to what I call variable and then to measurement, because that is also very critical to determine which method you are going to use. And then research hypotheses are just two. The last two alone, because the first one is a descriptive issue. So I don't need a research hypothesis for it. By the way, the hypothesis should be E, not I, right? Board composition has no significant effect on bank risk. Asset quality has no significant effect on corporate governance bank risk relationship. Now, to achieve this objective, I'm going to use this differential statistics. And differential statistics are many. It can be regression. It depends on if you have the data. Your data, the way you measure your data determine the method you use. Whether it's going to be regression, whether it's going to be ANOVA, whether it's going to be a t-test. Because any one of them can achieve any of these objects because they are all differential analysis. And because they are all differential analysis, you can use them to achieve it depending on how your data is measured. That is why I'll still come back to us to speak to us about how do you understand the concept and then talk about the indicator. And from the indicator, you go to variable. And then how do you now determine how you measure your variable? That variable measurement is so critical to understanding and determining the choice of method or suitable method for your research objectives. And this is one critical area people are missing that I will provide some clarification in my next video. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to the YouTube page. The purpose is to make clarification, right? Which is Edunomics NG with a U, but the Facebook page is Edunomics without a U, and I will post most of this clarification and then share to as many students in different universities so that they can learn from all this clarification. I'm going to be sharing my experience on several mistakes and errors that students do at masters, even PhD or even undergraduate. They can also learn from it because I'm going to take it step by step, because these are the foundation for research for everybody, whether you're undergraduate, masters or PhD, and irrespective of the field that you are. Even though my examples and focus will be more in economics, financial management, but it is useful. So please subscribe, share, and like. And I'm also going to be having one-on-one sections with many students from several universities, whatever you are. If you're interested in meeting with me on what you are doing on on your research, whether paper or project, undergraduate, master's, PhD, and you need clarification to guide you, to just explain to you the areas you're having challenges and what you can do, then you can reach out to me, because I will also be posting such videos on these two platforms. One-on-one section that I've had with students, master's, PhD, and even undergraduate, just to guide them through, so that they can have the nitty-gritty of research. These are some common errors that are being made by students. Okay, and I hope that you share all these videos, and then you also learn from it, and then invite your friends that are having issues to say, reach out to Professor Bright area and this issue, and let him guide you. And I have a lot of experts and friends that have agreed to work with me on this endeavor, to say, we'll meet with you. If you are doing something in management, for instance, it's not my area of expertise, I'll bring somebody in that area, and then we're going to have a session with you on Zoom. You don't need to be, distance is no more a barrier, on Zoom, and then we'll begin to talk about it. Thank you, and God bless you.